Hi, Bob.
Hey,
How was your day?
not bad. Went over to Aunt Rachel and Uncle Ricky, did some tacos. Russell with Christopher.
Hmm.
What about you?
I went to the store and I was behind a couple that was talking about, you know, guns and their children. And I thought that it would be a pretty interesting conversation to have with you because you were into hunting when you were small, and my family is completely against hunting and things of that sort. So I thought I'd bring a conversation to you and see where you stood on how old you would want our son to be when he started, playing with guns, even like the Nerf ones.
Well, what it all really comes down to is gun education
Mm-hmm.
and knowing which guns are, no, like bad.
Mm-hmm.
You can't mess with those, and which guns are for play.
Okay.
That's the big divider right there. Mostly like Nerf guns and all that stuff, those need to be taught that these are the guns that you're allowed to actually play with.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in our society, that's what is on the market: toy guns for kids to shoot at each other. And it kind of teaches bad habits, and that's why there's so many gun related accidents, such as a kid will find his dad's, you know, handgun
Mm-hmm.
and will think that it's his cowboy revolver, and an accident happens. And it all just boils down to education. And I feel not so much shooting guns and all that, but education should start very young, like as soon as possible.
Now, how old do you think a child should be before they start shooting, the real guns, a BB gun, rather than a Nerf gun?
The way I was taught was, in order to really know a gun, is you have to shoot a gun. You can't just catch a fish if you don't know how to fish,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, in order to know the safety of guns and, the power they possess, you have to at least have shot a gun or, something of that sort. I was probably about 7 when I shot my first gun. I'm not talking like 12 gauge or a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little pellet gun, little, or even might have been a 22, which is just really small caliber. Bullets are probably about this big.
Okay.
And even though it is still a gun, it is a lot less powerful, a lot less harmful to the person shooting. Whereas if I were to shoot a 12 gauge or something that is a very, very big
Mm-hmm.
gun, and it would hurt me just being behind it shooting. Um, so coming from a stance where, I've been around guns, I've hunted, I've done all this stuff, I feel like I'm educated enough to where I can educate someone else. And our son would probably be the person I would educate the most, seeing as there probably will be guns in the house, and I don't intend to keep them around him or in his reach. But if he were to ever, come into contact with it, he would know I'm not supposed to mess with this. I know this is a bad thing. I know the power it possesses, and I know it can hurt people if I play.
Right. And I understand, but I think 7 was a little bit early for your dad to introduce you to guns, and I think it would be a little early for us to introduce our son to guns. I think that something like that, especially in today's society, we should probably wait until he's a little bit more mature, especially because it's not hard to get guns anymore. You don't really need the licenses in order to get them. But I don't know.
It's actually a lot harder than you think to get guns. You have to have you have to go through a lot of paperwork just to own a handgun. And the reason there are so many gun related accidents and gun related crimes is because people who don't need guns can get them so easily, but the people who actually need guns, and this is kind of turning into like, a Second Amendment thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just harder for the people who actually like are responsible with guns to actually get them. Whereas people who, you know, are buying guns with the intent to do harm to
Mm-hmm.
other people, they can get guns from pretty much anywhere. Like,
Right.
so, um, with that being said, again, it all boils down to education. The people who are trying to inflict harm most likely were not educated. You know, they just know that guns can kill people, so that's what I will get. I know I aim it and pull a trigger, and
That's the end result just about
yeah,
every time.
but and the thing is, I feel the earlier Adante is introduced to guns, the better, because whether he's 5 or 7 or 13, at all those ages, a a gun will most likely be in the house. So say he's 5 years old, uneducated, because we want to wait on
Mm-hmm.
educating him on guns and introducing him to guns. You know, if he's 5 years old, he stumbles upon it, he's not going to know that this is a no-no. He's not going to know that this is a bad thing to have in his possession. Whereas if he were educated at any age, you know, introduced or whatever, he would know that, you know, oh, you know, dad and mom have talked to me about this, and I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm not supposed to have it. Now, granted, I will have gun locks and I will have everything. I will take every precaution I can to, you know, no loaded guns in the house, so
Mm-hmm.
there most likely will never be an accident. But just seeing it, he should know I'm not supposed to even be around this if dad or mom are not here.
Right.
So I feel like the earlier the education and introduction, the safer he will be around them.
And I do think that that's an awesome point because learning young is definitely the way to go. Now, how do you feel about the whole maturity factor? At 5, he'll understand that, it's a no no, but when he's, 7, 9, 11, 13, whatever age after that, do you think that maturity wise, if anything ever happened at school or he was just boasting to his friends about, hey, my dad has a gun, I get to do this and this and this, do you think that that could be a problem for us?
It's always a problem. It's just all based on the individual, whether they mature early or
Mm-hmm.
they're just, you know, like a late bloomer, I guess, like an immature, you know, that's just how they are. It all depends, and depending on his maturity and, you know, how he acts, you know, with other things like toy guns
Mm-hmm.
and in video games, say, or, you know, stuff like that, how he acts in that will definitely, like, judge on, you know, the age that you should introduce him. You know, if he's all gung ho on, you know, wanting to kill people in video games, then it's probably not a good idea to introduce him to guns, because then he'll know, hey, there's a gun in this house. If someone messes with me, I'll just GTA them, you know?
Right.
Whereas, you know, an immature kid, he or she, you know, they'll realize, like, you know, this is a video game. I can do this in virtual reality
Mm-hmm.
games and stuff, because when someone dies, they come back. It's only a video game. Whereas in real life, if someone dies, they're dead.
Right.
There's nothing after that. There's repercussions, there's jail time, there's, you know, just trauma, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just mental trauma, there's trauma to families, there's all sorts of things. And if your child is mature enough to understand, you know, I don't mean like the value of life, but like, you know, guns are dangerous and they should not be played with in reality. It's all just I guess just level of maturity.
Right. Now, since we're talking about, age 5 being an okay time, you have, 3 little sisters who are 5, 4, and 2. And they get to play with the Nerf guns and things like that all the time. We can even extend it to them playing with play swords. And you and I both know that if a railgun were ever presented to any of the 3 of the little ones, that they wouldn't hesitate because they play with things like that all the time. So Was that just, sorry, was that just, is that something that was at fault with, your mom? Or is that something that you think normal little kids around that age would do if
No,
they're presented with a toy like that?
that's definitely on my mom and dad. That's definitely, you know, ignorance on their part, because all of those kids do are sit in front of the TV and watch NCIS and,
Mm-hmm.
just other very brutal movies that they shouldn't be watching, and they're not educated on the danger of guns. That's uh, that's definitely on my mom and dad's part. They did not take the time out to say, "Hey, you're not supposed to aim that at people," or you're not supposed to. It's not a real sword or whatever. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sword. You're not supposed to hit people with that. You're not supposed to shoot people with this and that.
Mm-hmm.
That's their fault because they never educated them. That's exactly what I was saying earlier. It all boils down to education. The earlier the education, the earlier the understanding. So if they would have been educated, then they would know if a real gun were to be put in their hands, they would give it right back or set it down or, ask, like, why'd you give this to me? I'm not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
have this. And I'm not saying at age 5 Adante should be shooting guns. He should be educated. I'll
Mm-hmm.
show him, like, if you ever see this, you back away, you tell me, hey, it came out of the case, or hey, it fell off the shelf, or hey, I found this. He should
Mm-hmm.
let me know as soon as he sees it, as soon as he sees even ammunition, if he were to see a bullet, because, there's been cases where, like, a kid were to find ammunition and put it in the microwave or in the oven or something, and it could go off. Something
Mm-hmm.
could go wrong, and he could even just drop it down the stairs, and, it hits something just right, it goes off.
Right.
So even ammunition is a big deal. What it all boils down to is education and understanding. If he's educated and knows that, hey, this is a bad thing, this is something I should not be playing with,
Mm-hmm.
at my age, I'm, it's a matter of responsibility, really, on everyone's part. On my part for, having it chained up or in a safe or put away where he can't get it. And it's his responsibility, if he were to come across it, to let me know. So, if my sisters were to ever see a real gun, yes, I'm almost positive that they would aim it at each other and they would act like it is, a little toy gun that shoots water out, when in fact it could kill them because they were not educated.
So, at age 5, you think that your oldest younger sister, now that she's, been through playing with all that stuff, do you think that you could teach her education now and she would understand, or do you think it would just kind of go back to the way she kind of has already learned?
I feel anyone can learn anything at any time. Especially with her young brain, she's still developing.
Right.
I could definitely teach her right from wrong when it comes to firearms. It's just a matter of, her wanting to learn, or her wanting. So I'm pretty sure if she were to see a real gun, she would not know the difference between a real gun and a
Mm-hmm.
squirt gun, you know. And again, that falls back on the education that she was given. It's not her fault, that she doesn't know the difference.
It's not.
It's the adult in her life. It's their fault. Um, the fact that all three of them have not been properly educated on something, and good thing that they don't keep firearms in their house, or else I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure there would have been an accident by now. But I just think that the fact that all three of them have not been educated even the slightest bit on anything, like, how guns are not okay for them to have at their age, or, they shouldn't be pointing them at each other, they shouldn't be pretending to shoot each other, because if their only education is, this little gun shoots out water and it's playful, then if they were to come across a real gun, then they would kill each other.
Right, because
And
they would think that it was a toy.
exactly. And, you know, one of the biggest ways to figure out if it's a toy or not, or if it's lethal or, you know, of any danger or not, is always the orange tip on, say, an airsoft gun. Although it, you know, it does hurt when you get shot, it won't kill anybody. It has an orange tip on the tip letting you know that this is, you know, either a replica or this is an airsoft, this is non-lethal, you know. Whereas if you were to get a pellet gun that can actually penetrate skin and it's got metal BBs and, you know, it can actually hurt you, that does not have a orange tip on it because it is somewhat lethal.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another part of the education that I would give to our son and probably our sisters now that, or my sisters now that you bring it up.
I think after our decent conversation, without actually getting into an argument and listening to a little bit of each other's sides, that our son will be able to learn around, you know, ages 5 to 7, depending on his maturity.
Yeah.
I was kind of on the fence, but I think that it's better for him to know rather than to not know. He'll know the difference between this is what I play with and this is what can hurt somebody.
And it's not like I'm going to start him off with, you know, say a 12 gauge shotgun or a 20 gauge shotgun or
Right.
you know, a 30-06 rifle or anything crazy.
I certainly hope not.
Probably the first gun he shoots will probably be a Red Ryder pump action BB gun.
Okay. I'm okay with that, as long as you're okay with that.
Baby steps.
Baby steps are appreciated.